To everyone out there, happy Friday. Welcome to the fifth and final night of the first annual, hopefully annual, Oregon BHA Turkey Week. Thank you all so much for being here. This has been a pretty awesome exercise for us and easily making our best showing so far. Huge thanks to our chapter coordinator Jesse for helping with all the technical and making this happen, and our Northwest board member Carla Brower for doing all the work and incepting this concept and getting it off the ground, and of course to all of our friends at ODFW, Brandon, Michael, and everybody else. We owe them a ton of thanks for helping us in this endeavor. We are here tonight to talk about turkey butchery primarily, and hopefully cookery a little bit if you guys have questions. So we have Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife's Brandon Dyches, who has, with the help of our very own Carla Brower, prepared a wonderful piece on field care and breakdown of turkeys. And it's a longer piece. It's about 40 minutes. So I hope you guys have a cold drink, something to kick up your feet, enjoy a little bit of turkey talk. Just for your knowledge, we will be giving away 2 custom BHA turkey diaphragm calls from Native by Carlton, little batwing mouth call. We'll give one away at random to one of you who is here tuned in tonight. And then I thought it'd be fun to start a message board in the messages bar over on the side down here. I hope I pointed to the right corner of the screen, where you guys can share your favorite turkey recipe, and I'll select a winner out of that, and get you guys a call for that engagement as well. Finally, at the bottom of the screen right there, we've got a awesome raffle. Jesse, if you could pop that on the screen. This is our only fundraising component of this entire week, and so far the quarter. But we're raffling off a wonderful opportunity on some private land down near Scio to do a mentored turkey hunt with our very own Chris Hager. He's volunteered to take the lucky winner on a mentored hunt, it's on a hunt on this property. The word is there's a lot of turkeys. We'll be drawing another prize for a really sweet Dave Smith Jake decoy. Those are about the most highfalutin decoys in the game, valued around $170. Apparently they get Toms real riled up the minute they see them. And then finally, a third prize, a Phelps set of 3 mouth calls, as well as a crow call for those early morning and afternoon locate gobbles. So be sure to throw a couple tickets in the ring there. 88 cents of every single dollar we raise here goes to support our Pro Public Lands mission. And we appreciate your support more than I can possibly say. So with that, I hope you guys will all sit back, relax, and enjoy a wonderful piece by, again, ODFW's Brandon Dyches. And we will follow that up with about a half hour of Q&A, talk about any questions you might have after you see the whole thing. Brand's super thorough, but I sure do love breaking down turkeys and turning them into delicious meals. So come with questions after, and we'll look forward to talking to you then.
Hi, I'm Brandon Dyches with Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife and Pheasants Forever. I'm here today to talk about some tips for recovering a bird that you've shot in the wild, and then also next steps for field dressing and then processing that bird so it's in good condition for the table. So first, congratulations, you made a great shot on your turkey, I like to talk about what that looks like and what you should do out there in the field. It's very typical for a turkey to, after the shot, continue to move. That's normal. You didn't do anything wrong. It's just the energy of that bird coming out. So, you know, the first thing you want to do is ID the spot where you shot the turkey, and watch for it to move around and stop moving. If the bird runs off or flies off, it's possible you didn't make as good a shot as you thought. And the best piece of advice is to get up with your gun on safe, quickly get after that bird and try to figure out where it went and put a final shot on it if you need to do that. We've got a bird right here that is dead, and I want to talk quickly about best practice for approaching a bird. Like I said earlier, they can flop around quite a bit, and big toms tend to have spurs, so you want to make sure that the bird is completely still before reaching down. As you can see right here, these spurs are about 1 inch or better long, and they can be quite sharp, so just be careful in that regard. Once you know that your bird is dead, the very first thing you need to do legally is tag this bird. So in Oregon, there's a couple of ways to do that. You can use paper tags, or you can e-tag, and you know, you have to study up on which method is best for you and make a decision. I'm going to pretend that we've used the e-tag method through our phone. The technique there is to write down your name, your license number, and some other tag information that populates on your phone, and then place that around the leg is conventional, so I will tag this bird right now. Once you've tagged the bird, it's time to start field dressing this and processing it to take home. There's a couple different directions you can go depending on what end you have in mind. So today we're going to show a couple different approaches that are common and best practices in the field. I personally like to pluck my birds, so that's what I'm going to do with this tom here. So if I know I'm going to pluck this bird, I need to get it to a place where I can do that, you know, pretty efficiently and safely. One thing I like to carry in the woods is a turkey tote. Turkeys can be 20 to 25 pounds here in Oregon, so you know, that's not a light bird. This is just a dowel with a piece of paracord running through it, and I'll typically loop this around the turkey's head, and then the dowel acts as a tote for carrying this bird. The bird will typically be bloody up in the head, so just take care of your outfit and be mindful of that. If you have a pack or shirt that you don't want to get bloody, maybe wipe that off and keep yourself clean. So holding the turkey up like this, I can tote it to somewhere more convenient for processing, and that's what we'll do now. So we've decided to pluck this bird, so one thing I like to do is to hang it from a branch with my turkey tote, and that just makes it easier to manipulate. It's right here at body level. With plucking a bird, really experience is the best teacher here. I'll just start here at the neck, and sometimes it works best to pluck against the direction of the feather, and other feathers pluck best when you go with the direction of the feathers. So you'll be able to tell as you start to pluck. Now, just for speed's sake, I start at the top and work down and go slow, making sure to do as good a job as I can. A few notes on plucking and why I prefer that to skinning is that it tends to keep the final product a little cleaner for the kitchen. The skin acts as a protector for dirt and bugs out there in the field, and if you truly don't want the skin, you can always remove it later, but again, it's a nice protector until you get home. Second, it's quite tasty, so if you want to roast a whole bird or even just cook breast or legs, that skin is nutritious, and so I like to enjoy it in the things that I cook. You'll notice that I'm wearing gloves while processing this turkey, and while not required, it will definitely keep me cleaner. And I should mention that turkeys sometimes have critters that you wouldn't expect if it's your first time. For example, turkeys can have small lice, and they'll jump on your hands or your shirt. It's totally normal. That turkey's healthy. It's just a part of its life. And similarly, turkeys can have bacteria on their skin and inside of them. So just to keep yourself healthy and clean, it's good to wear a pair of gloves when you're doing this. Now, you'll notice that I'm plucking just a few feathers at the time, and my advice is to get as many as you can without ripping the skin. If you notice that the skin is starting to rip, well, you've taken too many feathers in that tug. So back off for that area. Try a little bit fewer feathers. The breast is particularly important. That's the most enjoyable part of the kitchen. So take extra time and care there when plucking on and around the breast. You'll notice that I'm leaving the beard intact. That's this paintbrush looking piece. And there's a couple reasons I'm doing that. It's also why I've left the head up top. In Oregon, you're required to keep proof of sex on the turkey until you get it to your house. That's the letter of the law, not back to the truck or the cooler or your buddy's house, but Oregon wants you to keep proof of sex on your game birds until you get back to your house. So the beard will suffice, and I'll also leave the feet with a spur on as well as extra proof of sex. I haven't mentioned it yet, but this is a tom turkey. It's got a big red head, a beard, and spurs. A bearded hen is the only, a bearded turkey is the only legal bird to shoot in Oregon in the spring. There are bearded hens, and as you can imagine, the excitement of a spring turkey hunt, you see a turkey with a beard, you probably think it's a male. So while we don't want to shoot hens in the spring because that's their time to reproduce, Oregon state law says you can shoot bearded hens, and that's really a forgiveness in case a hunter sees that beard and thinks it's a young Jake, for example. But the prize game bird in the spring, of course, is a nice mature tom turkey. At some point, you'll want to think about getting the wings off of the turkey. Usually 3/4 of the way through plucking, I'll think about it. And you have an option of cutting at the first joint or the second. The first is really tough and has a lot of feathers. It tends to dull your knife, so I'll tend to take it at the second joint. You lose a little meat that way. The technique is to cut through that flap of skin there, and then you want to find this first joint, and rather than just cutting arbitrarily through bone or where you think you need to go, it's easiest just to break a joint, and you'll see the separation of his humerus and the forearm here. And right at the joint, all you need to do is cut through a few ligaments and tendons on either side of the joint. And with a real easy cut, that whole wing comes free. The advantage here is I haven't dulled my knife cutting through feathers or chipping it on bone, and I get the whole wing intact. Now you can save this for archery feathers or adding to a turkey decoy, or even get into the wing here and save some of that meat for the stock pot. So I'll just repeat that on the second end. And I've come down to the joint, as you can see right here. You can start cutting a little bit to see the joint better. Once you get mostly cut, it pays to break and separate. And you can see that comes away so smooth and easy, and I haven't dulled or chipped my knife at all. Once the wings are free, it gives you a little more space to work. So I'll continue plucking all the feathers around the leg. And once we get to that point, we'll keep breaking down this bird. So we're getting pretty close to fully plucked here. It doesn't have to be perfect, but we're pretty close. At some point you want to remove the tail, and if it's a nice tom turkey, it's fun to save the tail and preserve it. You might want to add it to a decoy or mount it on the wall somehow. So this guy's tail's in very sorry condition, but in the spring they're a lot better. So what you really want to do is cut through the meat on either side of the tailbone, and then just twist it off. You don't need to chop or cut with a knife or scissors. So again, just cutting through the meat on the left side, cutting through the meat on the right side, and that frees the flesh up enough where I can just grab the tail, twist it, and it'll either pop right off or the bones have cracked enough where you can finish the cut, and you'll have a tail. And you can see this guy's not the most beautiful tom in the flock, but most are. So you can leave the tail in the woods or take it home, like I said. So at this point, we're super, super close. Oftentimes I'll take the turkey down now and in a clean spot on the ground, or if I've brought a game bag or tarp, I'll lay the turkey down and then continue processing the lower abdomen and then the upper throat area, and I'll show you how to do that here in a second. All right, for this next step, I'll just dig into showing you how to gut the bird. There's two places you need to do that, up at the throat area and then also down in the lower abdomen. We'll pretend that we're still in the woods or at the truck bed if you've toted the turkey back there. First, I like to go ahead and get these legs out of the way. We still have proof of sex attached with the beard and his head. He's obviously a tom. Similar to the wing tips, for removing the legs, it's a break and 2 cuts through tendons. So I'll take these legs and break them sideways at the joint, and then I'll feel the groove between the lower leg and the upper leg, and just thinly slice at that groove. And a light, easy cut will take this leg off. The lower tendon's a little thicker, so you got to give it some force. But no cutting through bone, no dulling the knife. So here we are at the leg joint, and you want to break it sideways. At that point, you'll see a separation between the 2 joints, and like with the wing tips, we're just going to cut lightly at that tendon. And the leg should come, and we didn't have to cut any bone, and it's off simple. So with the legs off, the lower legs off, we've got easy access to the body cavity, and this is just like processing chickens. If you've ever done that, a lot of great videos out there on YouTube. Essentially, you grab the area between the tip of the breastbone, which you can feel, and the cloaca, which is down here. Now I want to lift up a little bit and then create a light horizontal cut. I don't want to cut so deep that I go through the guts, but I want to cut deep enough that I can see inside of this cavity. And I've just done that. And at this point, I want to reach under the breastbone and create some separation. So I've created just enough separation where I can reach my fingers through. And what I'm reaching for is a large, hard organ, which is the gizzard. Now with the gizzard will come the rest of the intestines and the liver. At this point, you want to take the lower intestines and cut on either side of the cloaca, following the bone there, taking care not to cut through the intestines and spill any of the food or the intestine, sorry, out on the bird. Now, this bird had been frozen, so some of those spilled out. This will generally look a lot cleaner on a fresh bird. So now, typically you'll have the liver, and the liver's delicious. And so one thing you can do is look for the gallbladder. It's a small green organ. You want to totally cut that away without spilling any of the juices on the bird, because they'll be impossibly bitter. Also inside, you've got a heart, which is quite large on a turkey, so that's worth saving and eating as well. The gizzard is great for giblet gravy, so we won't go into how to cut that open here today, but you can cut and clean that and make sure to cut the intestines away from it. And you can keep the liver, the heart, and the gizzard separate as giblets. And typically I'll put those in a plastic bag away from the rest of the bird. So, like I mentioned, we've got some work to do up here at the top portion of the bird. And this doesn't get talked about a lot. It's often overlooked, but I'll show you quickly what needs to be done to keep your meat fresh up here at the top of the bird. One thing you can do is take the beard off. It pops off by hand, no need to cut it. You can save that as a trophy. And once we've done that, I'm going to be removing the crop, which is where a turkey stores its food, and also a fatty yellow mass, which is called the sponge. And those need to come out because they contain digestive enzymes. And in the sponge's case, it's quite fatty. You can already see this yellow fatty material. That's the sponge, and it's mostly in toms in the spring. It's a fat reserve, so they can focus on other things. And I'll tell you this: the sponge is sort of amorphous and sticky, and it's a little bit of a chore to remove it. But I just want you to see it and know what that is, so you don't think anything's wrong with the bird. He's perfectly healthy. One thing to note about processing game birds is that there's not a whole lot of cutting going on. You'll notice I've made very few incisions here, and most of the work I'm doing is really just pulling and tearing. And that, I can't stress enough why that's important. Now, I know where I am here, so I'll cut this sponge out a little bit and set it aside. You'll start to see some tubes. You've got one that looks like a vacuum cleaner hose. That is his trachea, and you can go ahead and remove it. I can get a hold of it. They tend to be slippery. So set that aside. You've got another tube, and that's his esophagus, his eating tube. I'll go ahead and cut that too. Now you can cut them ahead of time. It makes pulling all that out easier. In fact, I just forgot to do it. So after you've gotten most of this sponge away, and I can actually do a little better there. Once the sponge is away, you'll start to see another soft bag, and that's his crop. And that's where a turkey will store food before passing it down to his gizzard. You don't want to break this. You don't want to break the crop because it contains food and the beginnings of digestive juices, and they're so close to the breast meat, which we're starting to see, that you don't want to spill these digestion juices on the best part of your turkey. So I go really slow here, and you'll notice that I'm just pulling and tearing and letting this crop come out as it wants to without cutting it. And it'll come out entirely without a whole lot of cuts. And I'll encourage it with my finger here by just tearing. Now that crop leads to the esophagus. So you could cut it here before pulling out the guts. So let's go ahead and say I did that. And at that point, your crop is empty. Now this bird has an empty crop. So whatever it was doing before it died, it was not eating. But oftentimes this could be as big as a softball full of grass or acorns or snails or whatever it's eating. So you don't want the crop to explode all over your breast meat. So looking down into the breast, you'll see we still got quite a bit of fat in sponge. Now it's not like a big steer. You don't want to leave this fat in. It can go bad quickly, okay? So taking it, I'm going to rip and tear. And if you need to use a knife, you can do that. But this sponge material, I want to do as good a job as I can removing it. So as you can see, the crop and the sponge it's quite a lot of fat and membrane, which can cause this breast area to spoil. So we've done a pretty good job cleaning most of it out, and what's left is the clean breast material there. At this point, or sooner if you want, you can go ahead and cut the neck off. I usually do it about right here. Typically with a wild turkey you shot with a shotgun, this upper neck area will be very bloody and shot up with pellets. And that's okay. Just might not want to put it in the stock pot. So again, you'll notice I've tried to keep my knife off of bone. Some breaking and twisting can pull that neck off so that you don't chip your knife on bone. So at this point, we've got a bird that has been field dressed and processed to cool quickly. And you know what I didn't mention at the beginning is that's really our goal here, is to cool this carcass as quickly as possible. With the feathers on that bird, that acts as great insulation, and it keeps the bird hot. The internals here of a turkey are very, very hot, and if you put that turkey in the back of the car and drive 2 hours, you're going to affect the taste of that meat, which you don't want to do. So if you're in the field, it's a great idea to quickly field dress. If you don't have time to pluck it in the field, the least you can do is gut the bird. An old pro tip is to carry a frozen water bottle. Smart water is about the right size, and have that frozen water bottle into the carcass, and then put that turkey in a cooler or in the back of the car. You want to get this internal part of the bird cooling quickly, as well as the outside. So on the subject of rinsing, I'll often rinse my birds. Water's not your friend in terms of bacteria and spoilage, but I find that a quick rinse inside is adequate, and as long as you let the bird air dry and not be sitting in water, then you're okay. Especially if I accidentally puncture the guts, I'll always rinse it to get some of those bacteria outside of the bird before I pack it up in the refrigerator. So that's a processed bird. It's a little rough because we were hustling today. So if you're back home in the kitchen, then is the time to really make this perfect and get a lot of the feathers out, like so. Now, one thing about the condition of the bird we need to talk about is shot pellets. If you use a shotgun and shot pellets go beyond the neck and head, ideally you shoot a bird in the neck and the head. But if you shoot at distance or your pattern's more open, you can get shot pellets in the breast, and that's okay. But one thing you'll often see is that the pellet has pushed feathers through the skin and into the breast. So you can't see that right now, but if you had that situation, when you get back to the kitchen, it's a good idea to start pulling those pieces of feather out. Very typical for shotgun hunting. It just is what it is. But do your best to pull those feathers out when you see them embedded in the meat. Okay, so now I want to talk about some approaches to breaking down the bird for the kitchen. Now, I'll say that I enjoy eating as much of the bird as possible, so that's my approach. There's other ways to do that, other ways to process a bird. If you don't eat legs, I highly encourage you to try it. there's a ton of meat here. And then the carcass is also terrific for wild turkey stock. And it's in fact one of the reasons I've switched to all non-toxic shot for turkeys, because I just had a kid and I don't worry about any lead in this carcass when cooking. So I'll break this bird down as if I want to cook everything and make the most of it. So the first thing I'll do is take off each leg, because while you can roast the whole turkey and people show you how to roast a wild turkey, the breast is so white and overcooks easily, and the legs in a wild bird, because he uses them often, are so tough that you really can never get it right. So I'll always separate the leg and the breast, and you can make a light cut here. I'm not cutting meat, I'm just cutting through that skin, and like I said earlier, we're doing a lot of tugging, a very little bit of cutting. So if you press down on that whole leg joint while really pushing on the sternum, you're going to crack the joint here. That's the goal. And I'll cut a little more to see the joint better. But I'm really moving to crack this joint. Sometimes the turkey might break his leg as he's flopping around, and you're going to have to be careful of sharp bones, but most of the time he'll cut pretty easy. And here you can see where that joint dislocated. Now, when you get really good, you realize there's an oyster here, or a really nice chunk of meat, and you want to cut and get as much of that as possible, because it runs up into this corner. So get as much of that oyster as possible, and then find one of his backbones here and just cut along it, finding the crease between the leg joint and the hip socket. And I can see it and feel it with my knife. And here I'm hugging bone, making sure to get as much meat as possible in this leg cut. So that's standard technique for taking a chicken leg off, and what you end up with is a nice grocery store quality turkey leg. So I'll repeat real quick on the other side. In the seam between the drumstick and the breast, lightly score it to create separation. Break. Score again if you have to. And you're exploring around till you see and feel the gap in the joint between the hip socket and that leg bone there. So again, I'm going to explore around, cut as much of that oyster out as possible. And one thing you'll notice is that this meat is very dark, even darker than a domestic turkey. And it will turn darker yet in the refrigerator as this meat relaxes and settles. So here, I mean, we've got at least 4 pounds of great wild turkey. And I'll show you next how to get some of this off. Now, full disclosure, there's so many tendons and bones in the drum that I use it for the stock pot, and that's about it. I guess you could roast it like King Henry or something, but I'll usually cut it away from the thigh, right there through the gap. And again, we're breaking till I see the joint, the gap in the joint. That's a big theme here, cutting and breaking for the gaps. And then a light cut through the middle of the joint, through tendons, releases the leg. So again, I'll repeat here, looking for this seam between the muscle groups. I'll lightly score the seam. I'm not cutting through bone, but breaking the joint. There's one end of the joint. There's the other end of the joint. In between is just tendon and fat and skin. So a light cut through the middle. And I've got a drumstick. Fantastic for the stock pot. Will give you a nice wild bone broth. So once you've got your thighs, these make fantastic turkey mole. The original mole is wild turkey mole from down in Mexico. It's one of my favorite recipes. This also makes great ground meat. With one of these, I'll show you how to bone it out. I've got my bone here. You can feel that it runs straight up to the cap there. So if you just cut right on top of the bone, on either side lightly, what you can do is totally bone out this turkey thigh, which is a good pound and a quarter of meat. Wonderful. So if you were to skin that, you can drop it in the grinder, or it's a great braising cut to brown and braise down for turkey soup, mole, any dish where you'd braise chicken or domestic turkey. So just to show it again, cut right in line with that bone. Cut the other side. Scoop underneath, and I'm taking great care not to touch my knife on the bone, which will dull a knife very quickly. I missed that one. So those can go in the stock pot with your drums here. They've got a lot of good cartilage and such in there. Okay, so next I've got my wings, and they don't have a tremendous amount of meat on them, but it is white meat, and typically I'll either braise that down in my mole or carnitas, or I'll add it to the stock pot because of all the great tendons. And you'll get a feel for where this joint is over time. I kind of just know where it is by feel. So again, I cut through bone not one time, but I cut through this joint and separated the wing. So let's call that stock pot material. And then again over here. If you need help, you can crack and separate a little bit. You just find that by feel. There we go. Got a great wild turkey stock ready to go. So what everybody enjoys most is wild turkey breast. And here you've got a couple of options. You can take the breast away from the bone, which is what I'll show you here in a second. You can also smoke the whole breast, and that's a nice approach. So if you wanted to keep this whole to roast it like a Thanksgiving turkey, you could, or again, you could take the breast off and grill it, or smoke it, or cut it up into strips for frying, whatever you like. Either way you go, it's helpful to break the back away from the breast, and this is just classic technique for any game bird or domestic bird for that matter. So you cut through the ribs a little bit, break. You don't even have to cut this. You can just twist, and the back comes off. Now that back, rinsed, goes in the stock pot. So we got quite a lot of bird that I think a lot of folks leave in the woods, but it's a shame because with bone broth being all the rage, it's great to have some natural bone broth. So we're really left here with the carcass and the breast. You can shear up and take the second area of the back off. Right now, I'll just show you how to cut the breast off. So the turkey has a big knob right on his chest, and that's the center line. What I'll do is just cut straight down the middle of it, through the skin. And then I'll start favoring one side, hugging. We'll do this on the side just for either. And I'll just hug the sternum here. And rather than cut too much, I've got to reach down in and just start pulling, because I don't want to leave too much meat on the bone. And it pulls away quite nice. Now, of course, the breast is in two parts. So I just see that most of it is up here. Now, I really could trim that skin. And I've got most of the breast up here. So I will continue to hug bone very closely because I want to get as much of this breast meat as possible. So I'm really just riding the bones, which you'll feel with experience. And you see, I'm just barely kissing the intersection of the flesh and the bone, and the breast will pull away nicely. It's a little bit of that wing. So that's a rough cut. You can, if we were to skin it, you can always take that skin off. And I'm going to do that now just to show you the breast and how it looks. That's a full turkey breast with a rough cut. Now, back in the kitchen, you know, it's time to trim it up and make it a little more uniform. These bits of fat and skin on the edge, for example, you can cut off. There's a huge tenderloin on a turkey, and you can see that here. It's on the underside of the breast, just like a chicken or a duck, and you can pull it away by hand usually, and that's a nice huge turkey tenderloin. And there's your turkey breast. You could put these in a bowl to rinse, especially if there's feathers or if it's bloodshot at all, and rinse and soak for a little bit, and then take out to cook or freeze. So I'll just repeat that again on the other side so you can see. So I'm cutting the other side now, and like before, I'm really just hugging this bone and letting gravity and tugging separate the meat for me. You don't want to cut too much. And I'll use the knife sometimes to just find my way in the dark, so to speak, through those bones. Not through the bones, but alongside them. So here again we have our second breast. And as a rough cut, you'll have some pieces that you can trim and throw in the stock pot or give to the dog. And as before, you see this tenderloin, which is really, really large. And that's a nice piece. I'll mention this about the tenderloin. There's a super, super thick tendon in there, which if you cook and eat, you'll find, and it's virtually impossible to chew through. So you can pull that out or cut it out, because that's a really tough tendon that should come out. So end of day, what we're left with, if you do a fantastic job breaking down a wild turkey for the table, are the giblets, a whole lot of great bones and meat for the stock pot, braising cuts in the thigh, 2 tenderloins which are a meal in themselves, and then 2 nice breasts which can be grilled, smoked, fried, whatever your heart's desire says. Now, something else that I'd like to mention, if you're keeping the end in mind while breaking down your turkey, is how these different cuts cook. We've mentioned that the thighs take a long time and are best for braising, so we've separated them. These tenderloins don't take any time and are great for grilling or frying, so we treat them separate. Now with the breast, something I've learned is that this tip piece is very much like the tenderloin in that it's thin and small, and it will tend to cook very fast, where the upper breast is thick and takes a longer time. So, one trick is to cut the triangle tip off of this breast, and I'll do that on both. And that leaves two perfect little grilling pieces for, a quick 2-person meal. They're great, pounded out as sandwich size tips to the breast. And then what you have here is a uniform, thicker piece of breast meat, which is fantastic for smoking or roasting or whatever, however you want to cook it. But that's the theme I was trying to convey here, is that breaking up a turkey really helps because each of these parts behaves differently in the kitchen. So begin with the end in mind, and cut pieces up how you think you would like to enjoy them in the kitchen, and how they'll cook once you get there. Okay, that's it for how to approach a bird, take care of it in the field, and then break it down for cooking in the kitchen. One final point I would like to make is have a plan for what you do with the entrails and the feathers and any other parts of this process as you go through it. I can tell you from experience that your family does not like feathers in the sink or their coffee cup or in the house or anything like that. So if you can pluck a bird in the field, all the better, and then find a place to clean it that's agreed upon spot for your family. In relation to landowners and properties, if you're out in the wilderness area, I'd say it's totally fine to leave guts and feathers there. Nature will take it back. That's her job. If you're on a small private property, however, I'd have a conversation with the landowner ahead of time. Some are okay with leaving parts, but others are not. Either they don't want predators around, or they have a dog, or it's just not part of their property program. So just think about that before you get excited, and have a plan for what you want to do, not only with your delicious wild turkey meat, but also some of the byproducts that come with this process. So thanks for listening, and have a good season out there. I hope you can get a bird down on the ground so that you can process it and take it into the kitchen.
That was thorough. Glad to see everybody's still with us. Be sure to tune in with your favorite turkey recipe. Before we tune out today, I will be picking a winner. So far, I'm loving what I'm seeing. Smoked legs for sure. Make you feel like a Viking. That is a fact. We've got some questions. So without further ado, I'd like to address some that you guys have already posed. Welcome you to ask more. I'm no expert, but I sure do enjoy turning turkeys into food. One of my favorite things. So I'm pretty excited about the, what is it, next week? Yeah. The coming season is upon us. So hope you're all prepared after this week. I feel like we've provided more information than in years past. So love to hear also in the chat what everyone's plans are for the turkey season, recipes they haven't tried, and of course anything they need to know before they head out into the woods. First question is from Tony Heckard. He's asking if we or if I've ever wiped a turkey carcass down with white vinegar or vinegar to kill the bacteria after taking care of it. Personally, no, I haven't. I know that's a technique. It's a technique that I do use with some charcuterie when they'll develop a little bit of mold on the outside. But with turkeys, and Brandon covered this really, really well in his video, turkeys run hot. And so I find it very useful to get them cleaned out and in a brine or on ice as quickly as possible. Might be putting the cart a little before the horse, because our next question is about brining, and I'll get into that because I feel like it's a super important step. But to Tony's question, no, it's typically not something I do to use vinegar at that stage. Another thing we've got going for us with turkeys is if we're all doing it right, and at least with a shotgun and shooting them in the head, you have a really nice, clean product, a lot like that controlled process that Brandon just showed. So the threat or the risk of a perforated gut, which is something we deal with on a pretty regular basis with other white meat birds, upland birds, partridge, pheasant, ducks, and geese, of course. When you're hitting a bird with a body shot from a shotgun, your odds of perforating the gut, spilling those bacteria throughout the meat are substantially higher. So I guess typically with the turkey, you're dealing with a pretty clean product, and I don't feel it necessary. One point, I feel like Brandon's video, he and I agree wholeheartedly on almost the entire process. He hit the nail on the head from tip to tail. But I will say that I'm not particularly scared of rinsing. Typically, I think that the old adage of keeping your meat dry is very applicable in red meated animals, ducks, geese, deer, antelope, venison, all of those species. I stick to that rule rather strictly. But with your white meated fowl, I almost always follow the field with a brine. So I like to bathe my birds, and I encourage you all to do the same thing. Yes, I do suggest brining. The easiest way to go about brining, I've found, I love a 6% salinity solution. That is right about 1 cup of salt per gallon of water. Turkeys are big. They fit really nicely in a cooler, unless you have a Cambro or some sort of commercial kitchen, commercially stocked kitchen at your disposal. It's real nice to fill up 2-3 gallons of water into a small cooler or a vessel that will fit your entire bird, if that is how you're storing it. Of course, you can part it out to do that. But I like to do 1 cup per gallon of salt, and then an equal part, so 1 cup per gallon also of sugar, and then whatever aromatics you feel like. So in order of most common to least common, definitely bay leaves, garlic, a split onion if you want. I almost always squeeze a lemon or 2 in there. Cut them right in half, squeeze them in, throw the whole thing in. The rind imparts a little nice flavor that's always nice with a turkey that's destined for the grill or to be spatchcocked or roast whole. Rosemary is always good. And I see people go pretty wild with it, sometimes kind of more carnitas style with a bunch of oranges and stuff like that. But those are my standbys. And I find that if you really want to level up your flavor in the flavor department, you can make a simple syrup or dissolve your salt, sugar, and aromatics prior to diluting with cold water. But it is super important, like we said, turkeys run hot, super important for that water to be cold. So what I'll often do is make a calculation for, let's say, a 3 gallon brine. You put in those 3 cups of salt, 3 cups of sugar, 2 gallons of water, and a gallon worth of ice, or 7 or so pounds of ice, to really make sure that we get that meat down to temp quickly. Kind of back to Tony's question, prolonged time at higher temperature is really the enemy. So I find that with a higher salinity solution, you're going to do a really good job of keeping those bacteria at bay. Lower temperature is going to do the same thing, and we really negate needing to add any vinegar to the mix. Does cleaning a wild turkey make your farts smell like turkey guts? I think it varies person to person. And those around me are familiar with that problem. So it's something I've been told is psychosomatic, but it's a hard thing to deny when it's right in front of your nose, so to speak. Talia asked, what is the gelatinous membrane that you find on turkey meat? Brandon mentioned that one, the sponge up in the crop region of the throat, primarily of male birds, specifically mature male birds. It's a fat reserve that grows as the turkey heads toward the rut, if you will, and shrinks as they draw on that nutrition. It is something that I believe Meat Eater recently did like a true or false episode, and Danielle Pruitt reduced it and said that it didn't taste bad. That's not been my experience. I find it to be a little bit bitter. I usually chop that and leave it for the scrap pile. The other thing you might be that is coming to mind, and feel free, Talia, to specify a little bit, the membrane on top of all the meat. Okay, I see that in your comment section. The membrane on top of all the meat is just fascia. I think anatomically it's called epimycelium or I don't know. Pronounce the H in Talha. Talha? Is that right? Or Talhiha. No, there's no I. I apologize. I shouldn't be doing this on live. Now I don't know which one. That fascia in the meat, I noticed, especially after brining, that gathers. It's super hydrophilic. Water fills it up, and it's way more gelatinous coming out of the brine than going in. Usually, I will just kind of pull what I can with my fingers, and anything more tenacious, just pat dry before freezing or heading to cooking. But generally speaking, something I didn't cover in that brining process, I'll brine a turkey for up to 3 days, 4 sometimes, even if I'm lazy and taking way too long to clean up after a weekend trip. Haven't had a negative experience yet, as long as the water stays cold. But when the bird comes out of the brine, I think it's super important to make sure that it's thoroughly dried, especially before cooking, definitely before freezing. I like a vacuum sealer for turkey. And then again, loose, just general rules. I love keeping one turkey whole for the holidays. Usually like one spatchcocked and part out the other. Brandon hit the nail on the head, and we'll talk more about this when we get into recipes. But those cutlets in the breast are awesome for schnitzel. Smoking breast, I think somebody mentioned, is one of their favorite recipes, is phenomenal. And for all of those preparations, brining is only a benefit. And again, you want to make sure it's nice and dry coming out of the brine before it goes to the oven, grill, or whatever. So next question. So if I'm out camping, hunting, I need to leave the beard on the head attached in the cooler till I arrive home. Yes, that is correct. It is easier said than done. I will admit to not loving that rule, but it is one we need to stick to, and seeing it spoken by an ODFW employee reiterates the need to do it. Any proof of sex will do. If you just field dress, if you simply pull the guts out, throw an ice cold water bottle in the cavity, and you leave the head on, tail on, or beard, you're gonna be fine. So I think that's it. But that proof of sex is highly necessary. I was thinking to myself when Brandon was saying that, wondering if perhaps retaining the head with the beard attached, separate from the body, would be permissible. I think I should probably not wonder about that, and probably just do as the regulations say. Next question. Do you find the taste of wild turkey breast compares to chicken breast? Can it directly substitute in a recipe? Absolutely, it can. I think any folk knowledge of turkey being dry, stringy, tough, or otherwise unpalatable is rooted in bad meat care and lack of effort in the kitchen. My experience has been that turkey is an awesome stand-in for chicken. I will say that it is very, very difficult to get wild turkey legs to be as tender as, of course, a store-bought or even farm-raised or chicken, or even pheasant, grouse, or other wild bird for that matter. They spend their entire lives on those legs, so they are loaded with flavor, but my goodness, are they tough. There is a wonderful trend in our comments talking about slow cooker recipes for turkey legs. In my mind, that is the only solution. I think there's a no man's land between grilled fairly quickly and achieving suitable tenderness, and slow cooked in liquid and fat for a long, long, long time. There's a middle ground there where it will be dry and tougher than shoe leather. And so I recommend y'all to follow Brandon's advice to a T. That lower leg is definitely best in the stock pot. The upper thigh has a lot of great meat on it, but focus on either high heat and fast, but not rare, or low heat, simmered, braised, slow cooked, soup, stew, what have you. It does make a damn good mole, like he says. I've got some of that that I need to clear out of the freezer before we enter into next week. Do you want to age meat in the fridge? That's a great question. Aging and hanging are really popular topics of conversation in wild game. I find it it's really fun to dabble in. There are a lot of different goals that we seek when we hang or age meat. And frankly, most of those goals are not super applicable to white meat birds. Never mind the fact that those birds are the most prone to spoilage. You will hear a lot of people talk about au pheasant today, the French technique of hanging pheasants and partridge from the beak until it falls off. There are some circumstances where, and I've tried it, I've dabbled in it. I feel like it's a cost-benefit analysis that everybody should make for themselves. I've had some lovely aged partridge and pheasant, provided, of course, that the gut isn't perforated, but it's not something I like to do with a big hot turkey. Too much precious meat in there for me to waste it. Small caveat, the refrigerator is one of the driest places in your home. So if you are looking to get a really nice brown crust on anything, turkey, of course, for the sake of this conversation, but a steak, whatever. If you put that on a cookie tray in your refrigerator, make sure it's pat dry. And if it's uncovered in the fridge for a half hour to overnight, you'll get a really nice dry outside, and it'll crisp up way faster, way more thoroughly. And you'll get that really nice brown Maillard reaction that gives us all the flavor that we're looking for with those hot and fast preparations. Where and how can we download the video to have it where there likely won't be cell service? Well, all of our webcast series, all of these crowdcasts, all of our material that we've generated throughout this week will be available on the Oregon BHA YouTube channel. It's not yet, but we're working on that. We'll have it up, and there are ways for you to archive that footage offline. I lost the light. I find that those you can download YouTube videos or make them available offline. I will leave it to you to Google that, but those will all be available on our YouTube channel here shortly. In your experience, how does the meat compare to between hens, jakes, and toms? I have not shot a hen. Certainly not in the spring. But I don't think there's a lot of variation. At a point in time, I thought that a jake might eat a little better than a tom. Now that I've done the old Pepsi challenge between the two, I can say that there's not a whole lot of difference. Not above shooting a jake, but there's a good reason to hold out for a tom, because oftentimes they are a good 5, sometimes even 10 pounds heavier than a jake. And so more bang for your buck, or turkey as the case may be. Unless we have any more questions, I'd like to kind of circle back and talk about favorite recipes again. I wanted to make sure, I'd be remiss not to mention some policy activity we have going on. If you enjoyed Brandon and his extremely thorough treatment of turkey hunting, from beginner to advanced to all the way to the kitchen, we've got our sights set on a bill that supports much broader and broad-based sustainable funding for the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. The House bill number is HB 3328. And it would provide approximately $164 million of annual funding to the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, dedicated funding. That's a huge, huge upgrade from what they're currently getting. It would allow the agency to scale, to end the constant increase of tag and license fees, and invest in the resources that we all love and care about. It's a huge opportunity. We will be publishing an action alert as soon as it is scheduled for its next activity or for the next work session. That is not something that has been, it looks like Jesse put it in the chat. So if you guys are interested in supporting your local public lands, waters, and wildlife, this is one of the most consequential ways to do it. Please read our letter and definitely when our action alert, stay tuned for our action alert when it comes out. Sign it, share it. We want to see our state game agency funded past minimum because they really deserve it, as Brandon, I think, proved thoroughly. We've also got a couple other pieces of policy in the pipe, and one action alert currently live. And that one, I believe, is, Jesse, do you have the one that's live for the action alert? Pop it in the chat if you could. I've got the action alert. I'll pop it in there.
Actually, I believe that has passed committee. It's going to be referred to. Joel is going to pipe in on the chat here. But I believe it's going to be, it's passed through committee for due approve. So we're holding that action alert until it's been referred to, I think, Ways and Means. Is that right, Joel? Yeah. So that action alert will be up again shortly. Yeah. All
right. Well, just so we're all on the same page, we're talking about House Bill 3187. It creates a body in the Oregon Wildlife Council to educate and inform Oregon citizens of the current funding mechanisms for wildlife conservation. Yep, that's exactly right, Joel. 3187. It is a, as we all know on this chat, hunters and anglers are pretty much the sole providers for conservation and wildlife management at the state level through tag and license sales and match funds from Pittman Robertson, Dingle Johnson. We represent well over 90% of the funding that all of these initiatives get. And back to the other bill that I mentioned, 3328, our wildlife's up against a fair bit of challenges. If you've tried to chase the mule deer in the state in the last couple of years, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But on the specter of climate change, human development, population growth, and increased recreation, the challenges our wildlife face are taller than, frankly, we as hunters and anglers can currently provide. So this bill, HB 3187, will help us build stewardship in our fellow public landowners who might not hunt and fish. And then, of course, if they knew how things were funded, the challenges we're up against, the shortfalls that the current funding model produces, that things like HB 3328 would pass, I think, no questions asked. Of course, all of us here in Oregon know that people love our state for its vast and varied outdoor recreation opportunities, whether that's hunting, fishing, or any number of other activities. It's something that we need to invest in. We've proven that recreation has a cost, more than just footprints and photographs. And we need to make sure that our wildlife are looked out for. So I'd encourage you all to stay tuned on those subjects and lend your voice where you can and amplify it at any chance you get. Let's see. Any further questions? I think it's time to select a favorite recipe. I saw one that mentioned morels, but I'm going to go into our archived answered turkey nuggets with morels, coated with a egg milk mixture, dredged and crushed seasoned club crackers, fried in butter till golden brown. You're speaking my language, Seth. And it's hard to feel more fortunate than cooking fresh turkey and accompanying it with fresh public land, spring mushrooms, morels, or whatever you can stumble upon. But morels are the classic, right? There were two others that I'd like to throw into consideration before we narrow it down. Seth, you also said you can't go with Hank Shaw's go wrong with Hank Shaw's recipes. You are not wrong. Hank is God. For anyone seeking a little to spice up their kitchen life, check out Hank Shaw's website, as well as the website, the recipe section on the Hunt to Eat website. Awesome recipes from that are built around wild game. Hank is you just can't go wrong with anything on his website for birds or anything else for that matter. Green chili enchiladas with a nicely slow cooked turkey leg. That is up there with the best of it. And then finally, a Southwestern blue corn turkey tamale. That sounds awesome. Braised leg and thigh, pulled meat, and refried in lard with a prickly pear chili sauce. Points for creativity. I'd like to make sure that I think we have a winner. The name here is Wolf. We'll make sure that Jesse will reach out to you, get your contact information, and get you a call in the mail. Jesse, have you been able to select another winner at random for the other mouth call?
I have. And at complete random, it is Stephanie Schultz.
Stephanie Schultz.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we will reach out to you, Stephanie, for shipping information and get you that in the mail. And then for everybody else who is hoping for a turkey call, make sure you go right back down to that link right there. Drop a couple dollars in the old raffle pile. I think you'll be well rewarded. Like we said earlier, we've got a set of a crow call and a set of 3 mouth calls at as third prize, a super sweet Dave Smith decoys Jake set at number 2, and a exclusive access on a mentored hunt, private land hunt in Cy, Oregon, where we are assured the turkeys are numerous at prize number 1. So be sure to throw your hat in the ring. We'll be pulling those names and contacting winners on Sunday afternoon this weekend, just in time for turkey season, and following up ASAP so that you can be sure to get out in the woods with your new gear or a plan to go kill a farmyard bird. Probably not out of a farmyard, but hopefully you see a lot of them. And if there aren't any more questions, I'm going to go ahead and turn this thing off. We have enjoyed your support this week. It has been fantastic to see the turnout. Love the energy we've been getting every night. And please let us know how we can improve things like this. We want to keep doing this. It takes a lot of work on behalf of our entirely volunteer board and our singular regional employee, Jesse. So we want to do these as much as possible. We of course have to make sure that we can make it make sense and that they support our mission and don't hamper it. I know that the last year, we're all thirsty for interaction and experience after the last year that we've been through. So let us know on our social channels or via email. You can always reach us at oregon@backcountryhunters.org. Let us know what you want to see us do in these avenues. And then we all would really appreciate you feeding us other opportunities, like places that you'd like to see us play in conservation opportunities, collaborative work efforts with other conservation orgs or state agencies. When something goes up on your radar, be sure to let us know. We want to make sure that our action reflects the will and desires of our members. So this whole thing really depends on, it runs on membership. We've taken on a serious note, real talk, we've taken some serious hits to membership in the last year. So make sure it would be a huge favor to us to make sure that your membership is up to date. If you've got friends and family who hunt, fish, or just enjoy public land, make the sell to them. Just because we've moved to a new administration and the specter of public land liquidation doesn't hang at the federal level, that doesn't mean that there aren't still threats in the works at the state level. It doesn't mean that wildlife, wild places, and waters don't need our support. So please, please, please lend your membership, support our raffles if you need to see something in return, and hold us accountable. Keep us informed of opportunities and places you want to see backcountry hunters and anglers make a difference. Please also continue to pay attention to our blog and social media feeds for developments on the policy front. It's been a hectic legislative session. We've had all sorts of things die that we expected to put a lot of effort into, and things that we didn't expect to put effort into make it through initial sessions. So we are working hard behind the scenes to make sure that that your voice is heard in support of all the resources that we all love and depend on. And with that, I'll leave you guys with that as we enter the weekend. Go enjoy one more weekend, get your stuff in order, have fun out there in the turkey woods. Of course, be safe. show us your success, show us your failure, share your shot turkeys, grip and grins, and beautiful pictures of Oregon turkeys by tagging us on Instagram and on Facebook. And be sure to stay in touch and keep it public. Have a great night, everybody. Take care.